Hello and welcome. My name is Madeline Longoria Garcia, and these are our other stories. Today on the podcast, we have Matthew Torres joining me, who is a husband, a father of two beautiful little girls, the founder of Long Beach Coffee Club, a marketer, and somebody who you describe yourself as a curious person, specifically about the intersection of consumers and specialty coffee. And I think, we'll get into that in this conversation, but I love that you add that, like, I'm just a curious person too. And so thank you for sharing that, and welcome to our other stories.
Yeah, thank you so much. I'm a big fan. I got to listen to some amazing stories from diverse backgrounds, and we were doing a little chat before this, and I think the conversations you have via this medium of like a podcast is always the best. And I think like overall, I think that's my favorite aspect is just having good conversations and just being part of the ride. Because I think that's the special thing of this is like a good podcast. You'll maybe learn something, but also you'll leave like, wow, like I felt like I was in the room. And I think that's such a special gift. And there's like magic that happens like in the middle of, oh, you said this, it reminded me of this, and it goes places that you don't know. It's kind of like a choose your own adventure. So stoked to be here.
Thank you. Yeah, it's funny because during these conversations, I mean, the goal is to just have a conversation with people, first of all, right? Not interviewing people, not really like, I'm not trying to create a platform where people are like marketing their product or their business or their service. I'm just trying to allow folks to share a piece of them and their journeys. And in these conversations, it's funny because if people watch this on video, sometimes I'm looking down and taking a note on something because the person has said something. I'm like, don't forget to come back to that and like talk about that because it reminds me of this other thread that I want to make sure we explore. Or like I have something that I want to share about that piece too that reminds me of something that I've experienced. And so, it is podcasts that I listen to. I love the ones, like you said, it kind of leaves you feeling like, oh, I was in the room. I was listening in with them and participating. And you have, like, I laugh at the podcasts I listen to, or I'll feel the emotion of that, whatever the person is feeling too. And I love those. I think it's great to have the really educational podcasts too, but they serve a different purpose, right? It's not really about connection and community. It's about information and relaying information and data. And that's not what this one is really about, Yeah. And first of all, I want to start with just like, how are you doing today, this week, in this moment of life?
It's I think the first word that comes to mind is interesting, and that's like the politically correct way to put it.
Sure.
It's a very unique time, and I think like raising two girls in America, the way the country is going is just not the way that like I hoped it would. But we talk a lot about, my wife and I, about like potentially like moving abroad, but I also think it takes people to also have different voices to turn the country back around, per se. And so I think like we're okay. I think for me it's like deleting social media every now and then staying off and just trying to have conversations with the community around me, with friends and family. Just important, like focusing on the big things and making the big things the big things, and not all of the things we consume nowadays is more important than ever. And then I think like I just watched something around walking, and that
Hmm.
has given me so much peace over the years of like deep thoughts and all of these like shower thoughts, which has like birthed like Long Beach Coffee Club and like familiar coffee and all of these aspects. And so I think like I'm putting forward hopefully to walk a bit more again. And I think like long walks, like 30 minutes
Yeah.
to an hour and a half, are just so fruitful. So yeah, I think all right, but not, it's tough, and
Yeah.
trying to stay positive through it and also lean on community through it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's very real. And I relate with everything you said. I don't have kids, but I think about parents right now, and I cannot imagine, what some of the thought processes are. Thinking about even just, I mean, the social media piece, right? Like I don't think I have muted notifications on so many apps ever before, where I'm just like, nope, I don't need any of this. Actually, I'm going to just remove myself from this. Um, Try to focus on what is here and now in front of me, what I'm doing. And then also recently this like physical piece, right, of going on these walks, allowing that quiet time for our thoughts to, there is this whole aspect of like the creative thought process being
Yeah.
triggered and nurtured through that movement, and it's literally just walking forward, and it doesn't have to be this crazy workout thing. You don't have to be jogging, you don't have to be running, it's just any movement. And yeah, I personally just this week finally was like, go take yoga classes again for the first time in a while, and it's something that like I used to do a lot, and I just hadn't been prioritizing it. And I think a part of me in the back of my head was like, you can do this at home. Like you'll get up tomorrow morning and just like do it tomorrow morning. You're going to, and it doesn't happen. And I know that I'm the type of person, I need it to be, no, you signed up for this class. You've committed to it. You need to go somewhere else, do this, be led by someone else and have that time dedicated in your calendar. We're like, no, you've already registered for this. You're doing it. There's no sleeping in or backing out of it at this point. So yeah,
I
I think
feel
that's
that.
really
I like
important.
that community part. I think
Yeah.
we we lost a bit of it in the pandemic, which just seems like a blur, like those years. But then I think like you kind of don't know what you missed until it's gone, kind of
Yeah.
aspect. But yeah, I resonate with like the working out classes. Like I during the pandemic got like the Peloton or like the dumbbells
Yeah.
and did home workouts. But once like everything was safe, like went back to a gym. And I think, um, yeah, your physical health kind of is definitely connected to your mental health,
Hmm.
and like spiritual health as well. And I think on top of all that, like there's something about being like the suffering near other people of like working
Yeah.
out, and you're just like, oh yeah, I'm not into this alone. And those like light conversations is super helpful, because unfortunately I don't go to like cafes as much as I used to. Like I used to always go to
Hmm.
cafe for like every single cup of coffee.
Oh, wow.
But now I'm like full on home brewer, and I'm working on a video that's just like, imagine having like a world class cafe in your house. And I'm thinking about like, okay, like what goes into this video? And then I have a bunch of videos from like coffee shops from Tokyo and from
Mm,
Copenhagen and all over the world. And then I'm like, well, I know exactly what kind of coffee I like. So I order the best coffee, and that's like my like fun budget. And then I make coffee here, but I purposely leave out not buying an espresso machine, because I would still want to go to cafes, and I don't
yeah.
have the resilience of dialing in every morning. But part of me still wants to go on that journey and shop for an espresso machine and save up and do all that. So I'm thinking about like concepts on the consumer coffee side of like, there's so many choices. Ideally, I
Yeah.
would love to have a La Marzocco $5,000 machine at home,
Right.
but
Right.
I didn't win the lottery.
Yeah.
So I'll probably have to do something a bit more budget conscious. so my girls can go to college one day. So
Right. Oh my God. Yeah.
yeah, so it's like those are like the kind of thoughts. And I think for me, coffee's always been like the creative side of me, and the
Mm,
analytical side is like what I do on the day job and the marketing and stuff. So yeah, so those, circling back to the original part of community and conversations where I was really leaning into coffee shops. Now they happen more at like the gym and,
yeah.
parks, because, Izzy, my oldest, always wants to go to parks. So I'll talk to other parents randomly or when I'm walking my dog and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, and I'm curious too about this piece because you have a background in marketing, correct?
Yep.
And then entered specifically the coffee sphere and built this community. I mean, the Long Beach Coffee Club, just because you like coffee, right? And now, I mean, I feel like a lot of people in the coffee industry know who you are. And I learned about you through Long Beach Coffee Club and just like engaging with you. I don't know. When did that start during the no, it started before the pandemic, didn't it? Okay. I feel
Yeah.
like
It
maybe
was
I learned
like
about it during the pandemic though, because you were doing a lot
probably
more
because I was
online
just doing
stuff.
all of those like interviews. But yeah, it
Yeah.
started at a coffee shop called Stillhead here in Long Beach. And I was just sitting at a coffee shop and just trying to think like, okay, if I quit the corporate job, like how can I like go into like the coffee industry?
Mm.
And then I knew like, at that time and still today, like I don't have any ambition to open a coffee shop. And I think that's like to each their own, but like if you have that passion, that's a long road, but you
More
really have
power
to
to
love,
you.
yeah, you have to love it. And I love going to coffee shops, but like, I don't want to like, there's not that, I know it's a fallacy of like the romantic, you open a coffee shop, you drink
Hmm.
espresso in the corner. No, you're going to be like doing all the grunt work because like you're trying to keep this very hard business to be profitable. So, yeah, I was just thinking about, yeah, there's probably, you know, other people that are coffee parallel, but are baristas and roasters in the coffee industry. So I wanted to connect with them, set up a meetup, and then just started partnering with coffee experts and started trying to do an event every month. That was my goal. And kind of built up over time, and then started partnering with like bigger kind of coffee brands. But I realized like this was kind of a hobby, and it was
Hmm.
not like I can quit my job and do that.
Hmm.
So um, I started kind of shifting it more from sponsorships and things like that to let's just like really hone in on like consumer coffee education and community. And then
Hmm.
that's where I think it really grew. And that was probably like 2018. And then we started doing like rad stuff where I always loved like show and tell in elementary school. At least in the US, that's a thing.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
we started having these like clubhouse show and tells where like you bring your own brew and like you bring what you're brewing and then you kind of share it with everyone. And that was my favorite time period for Long Beach Coffee Club because like we went, like my wife and I got married and then we went to Tokyo. So we brought beans back and I got to share the beans with like coffee club members and things like that. So yeah, it was that. And then the pandemic happened
Yeah.
and we couldn't meet anymore. So that's when all of these like I call them live podcasts happen. And that's probably when we started connecting. And yeah, and kind of going from there. So yeah, it's been great. Now it's more of like once in a while events, but
Sure.
I still am very passionate about coffee.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and the whole premise is just building community around a shared interest in sharing experiences and information. I love that, like the show and tell aspect. And it opens the door for learning together, like communal learning and asking questions. And I would assume it just kind of became this safe space for consumers to be like, I don't know that much about XYZ, but this is what I like. And I think that especially in any industry that becomes kind of mm, hyper focused in a specific way tends to become a little bit elitist. Maybe not a little bit, but
Mhm.
like pretty elitist.
Yeah.
And it makes people shy away from engaging because they feel like they don't fit in or they feel like they don't know enough. And so I think those kinds of spaces in in really like every consumable industry, I'm thinking like beer, wine, coffee, different food products, like why not create these fun, engaging spaces where you can just like come talk about whatever you know or enjoy and other people can share and you can maybe learn from each other and like find something new maybe that you like and enjoy. So, yeah, I like that. I personally so I don't drink a lot of alcohol, but I find wine to be super interesting, but I know
Mm.
nothing about it. And I'm just like, I don't even know where to go to like learn. I don't want to read, right? Like I'm not going to read about wine, and I also don't want to go out and buy like 10 bottles of wine and taste them. So, how do you learn about it more,
Mm.
and where are the spaces that it feels accessible and interesting and welcoming, right? Versus that question, I feel like you walk into a wine bar and you're like maybe trying to order a little sample of stuff and they're just like, "Well, what do you like?" And if you don't know how to answer that question, you're
Yeah.
like, okay, I don't know how to engage with this then." And it's the same thing with coffee too.
Yeah, it's so true. I would feel like I tried to get into wine too before even coffee, and
Yeah.
then I had a cousin that really loved wine, so that was my like kind of my Yoda per se, where I would ask her questions, and then she would like kind of flag, "Hey, they're doing tastings here, so you can kind of try different things." Um, and yeah, but it is. I would say wine's a bit more
More
hard to get
elitist.
into. Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, I think like coffee people usually like go in the direction of wine or like whiskeys and
Oh,
scotches and
yeah.
all of that, or
Yeah.
any kind of spirits. But um, I think at the end of the day, like we're just I think I'm still like chasing flavor and
Mm,
trying to, this will date me, but like back in the day when I was a kid, we would have a Rolodex where like, we would
yeah.
have people's numbers and then like a landline. And I try to create like a Rolodex or a catalog of flavors so then I can kind of call out those flavors
Yeah.
in notes. And I think that lends well to wine because there's I think more specifics in coffee than wine, but like wine still has like different flavors and then things
Yeah.
like that. So, but yeah, it's like the same thing, right? Like, how can you make it approachable for people that probably don't look like people that drink this specific
Mhm.
thing and create a space where you feel welcomed? And I
Mhm.
for Long Beach Coffee Club, it was chasing that like Mother Teresa quote of like the West, and like the biggest issue is like loneliness.
Mhm.
So we really focused on like, okay, most of these people like don't have community or friends and they're coming alone. And sometimes people will come with friends, but how can I create a space where they can meet someone and
Yeah.
potentially can blossom into just like a friendship? And
Yeah.
that was helpful to be like a North Star, because before it was, and there's nothing wrong with this, but it was very educational. It was like the history of coffee and like it came from here and then went to here. And then I was just like, okay, like latte art and brewing coffee. But like Meetup actually flew me out to New York because we were like a unique meetup on
Nice.
their platform. And once you kind of take a step above everything on like a kind of 50,000 foot view,
Mhm.
you kind of create those ethos. And that was super helpful during that time.
Yeah, that piece about loneliness, this has actually come up previously in other recordings for this second season of the podcast, where that's kind of that's like the inspiration behind creating something where you are reaching out to others and building a community and connecting people with each other. Because I mean, loneliness is it's a real thing, and it's very hard, and everybody, no matter what, you will have at least one, but likely multiple seasons of life where you feel very lonely. And it's so hard, I think, to motivate yourself to like go out and find the thing and find the people, right? But if something kind of lands in your town, in your neighborhood, shows up on, your Instagram feed of like, "Oh, I'm already kind of interested in this thing. Why not just go?" And everybody is showing up, like you said, like majority of people are showing up by themselves too, so it doesn't feel like I'm showing up to this party where everybody knows each other and I'm the
Mhm.
stranger and trying to like figure out where I fit in. It's like, "Oh no, we're all coming together as new people and getting to know each other." And this just happens to be the thing that is connecting us. And at least we have like a starting point for conversations too, right? Like that's a nice thing of like, okay, at least we have one commonality that we know we can start conversations with this thing. But
Yeah, which is like
yeah,
very helpful. I think
for sure.
like if someone listens to this and like I put on terrible events for Long Beach Coffee Club. Let me like be real with you and very vulnerable. I didn't know what I was doing. And I
Mhm.
like gave this talk at like Coffee Con when that was like a conference, and like people were really interested in like creating communities in their cities. So they were like, flying into LA. So I was very simple and practical. I was like, look, you do like three things, and then you can do a Long Beach Coffee Club style thing that like I don't have to be affiliated with. Like, go and
Yeah.
connect with people that like coffee. You find a platform that like you can connect with people. You create some events, and then you figure out a space that you can host it at. And then you just do it, and people will start coming. And I think like yeah. If I knew it was like that simple in the beginning, I probably would have did it like 6 months or 8 months before, but I was
Mm,
worried. It took me a while to
mhm.
like get uh excited enough to be uh I guess open to fail.
Yeah.
And know like, okay, I'm terrible at small talk. So those first like 15 minutes of like people getting there and like me meeting someone new, I'm not great at, but like I'm gonna put myself out there. And then I got like okay at it. And then like I'm like, okay, like we don't want to like do small talk and talk about politics or religion or like all the big things, right? So you don't want to have these like deep conversations of like, what are you doing with your life?
Yeah.
You want like simple local events and like current events. So after I learned like not to like derail random conversations with strangers, I was okay with it and not anxious at every event. But
Yeah.
it was definitely like a trial by fire, and I'm glad I did it. And it wasn't anything I imagined. So I would
Mm,
say if it's wine, if it's coffee, or if it's I don't know, making like Christmas cards or something, like
yeah.
go and try to connect with. There's like people that are interested in everything.
Yeah.
So I would just encourage people to like take the leap and just try to connect with your neighbors, right? Because we need to connect more than ever. And that's, what I hope to, continue to do. And now it's
Mhm.
more for me in this season of life, it's like more like parent stuff.
Mhm.
Um, and specifically dads. Which is great. It's just like, oh, I do miss like the coffee talks and things like that.
Sure. Sure. Yeah, I mean, as you were talking and sharing about kind of that fear of not doing it the right way and maybe and failing and stuff, it's like, oh, that might be even just the marketing background too, and the need to like execute on something in a really curated way. And I think too, just like this tendency toward perfectionism, which is tied to like that fear of failure and needing to have something be, yeah, just like very neat and perfect, and nothing is perfect. And once we're able to let go of that fallacy, right? That like something needs to be perfect to put it out in the world. It's so freeing. And that's something that I've struggled with too. And a lot of that is because we get that external messaging from people, from entities, from companies, from everything, that it's like you can't mess up in front of people because they are going to point it out. And I've had that throughout my whole life where people do identify like, oh, you made this typo, this was a wrong edit, or like you know, these different things. And I remember finally getting to the point of being like, oh, well,
Yeah, for sure. So
yeah,
good.
like
But like I
it's going
love
to
like
happen.
I don't know, maybe it's just me and maybe you can relate to this, but I'm like such a people pleaser and I think like listening to David too, like in a previous episode,
Hmm.
um like I that it's crippling. It's
Hmm.
like, oh, I don't like what if they say this or whatever, but
100%.
like God bless those people that like don't care about other people's opinions, which I think everybody does. But
Yeah.
maybe that's just a hot take. But I think like once you get beyond that and you're like, okay, people are going to be critical and everyone's going through their own things, and sometimes they'll like spill it out on you. But you know, the kind people and the people that would affect is more important, or you know, I can get over that hump is such a wonderful place to be. And you know, this podcast is probably a testament to that, because like putting yourself out there and having these conversations and centering around, you know, all of these great topics, I think is huge. So
Hmm.
and then the other aspect of like perfectionism, I think it kind of stems from me from probably career stuff too and marketing, but a lot of like my upbringing with my culture. I'm Mexican, just the home I was brought up in, which was Mexican American. Like my grandparents kind of came here in different ways from Mexico. And I think like being third and fourth generation was
Mm-hmm.
very different from friends that, you know, are just American and have been here for a lot longer, or,
Hmm.
you know, immigrant friends or first generation friends. So a lot of that I think is like rooted in. And then sports. I think sports was
Oh, yeah.
my call to my parents, specifically my dad, of like, okay, like I can see that you love these things. So I'll go and try to be the best at these things to get your
Mm.
attention. And I carry that into everything I do now. And that
Hmm.
has definitely shaped who I am. And I'm decoupling that through reflection and therapy and things like that. But I want to make sure that like my girls know like they don't need to do anything. Like
Yeah.
them existing, I love them so much. So
Yeah.
that's what I hope. And no shade to like my parents or anything. I think they did a great job, but I think more of like, you know, we can all learn and build, and I think
100%.
yeah, we can grow in that. So yeah, I think that perfectionism runs strong, at least like through my perception of like culture and heritage and things along those lines, because yeah, it's still with me today.
Yeah. I mean, that, so I am second generation on my dad's side and like third, fourth generation on my mom's side, like very blurred, kind of a one of her parents, the border crossed them, that family, you know, so who know, I just however many generations that is. And then the other um parent, they was there, gosh, I can't even remember now. My grandmother on my mom's side was born in the United States as well. So fourth generation, yeah, third, fourth generation. But it is even this like dichotomy too of like, well, okay, my family comes from somewhere else, quote unquote. So I don't fully fit in with people who, with white people, with people who claim like Americanness as their only identity, right? Or like cultural identity. And then also this difference between being first gen. and folks who are that much closer to the migration and the immigrant experience. And this is something I like relate with this too with you and you. So everybody who comes on this podcast, I send them a form to just like give me a little bit more information, because some people I know very well, some people I don't know as well, or a lot of the folks I've only known in a very specific set of circumstances. But maybe our conversations have kind of like towed along these other topics, and I know that there's something more there to explore. And so I'm like using this as an opportunity to dive deeper into these other topics with people. So that form gives me a little bit more information. And you say on there, this difference of being third or fourth generation in the United States, not growing up, not being uh, taught Spanish. I didn't grow up speaking Spanish either. Little phrases, like
Yeah.
my grandparents, there were phrases and things, and I knew like some, I understood some, but my parents never taught me Spanish, even though for both of them, Spanish was their first language. But for both of them, as soon as they were in school, English. And the household switched to English because it's that belief that they needed to assimilate very intentionally and very aggressively, I think. And so I speak specifically with my mom about this, and she's like, everybody switched to English as soon as I was in school. My parents, my aunts, like, and uncles, like, everybody switched to speaking to me in English. And she lost a lot of her Spanish because of that. And so my sister and I did not grow up around with parents who were speaking Spanish. Our grandparents still did, but again, it was just they would always switch to English with us. It was like this pain point for me growing up, where it's like, I only know a little bit. I only know some phrases. And it took me living in Spain. I left and went to live in Spain for several months because, well, for a few reasons. One, I just wanted to get out of the United States. But two, I was like, I need to learn Spanish. Like, I really want to just like learn this language. And that's where I picked it up, because I was in this tiny town. I think there were two other people who actually spoke English, maybe three people who spoke English. So I was forced to learn the language very quickly. There are still some words that I default to that is like Spain Spanish. That does not mean the same thing in Mexican Spanish. And I
Yeah.
need to catch myself sometimes, because sometimes it's a bad word. And so I'm like, this means something very different in Mexico compared to Spain. So, but I had to do that. And I felt like I had to, and I wanted to do that because I was like, this is just a piece of my history that I haven't been given access to. And I wonder for you, and especially in Southern California too, I assume you know at least some Spanish, but what was like, do your parents speak Spanish?
Yeah. So my dad's bilingual and my
Okay.
mom, I would say, understands a bit of Spanish, but more like English forward. So I would call her bilingual. So definitely wasn't spoken in the household, similar to you. Grandparents on my dad's side spoke Spanish mostly. My grandmother has like the most interesting migration story that I didn't learn like all of it until like
Mm-hmm.
college, where she grew up in Zacatecas and then moved with like her tia, who was a nun outside of Mexico City, and then migrated here to take her like cousin's identity that passed, and then
Whoa.
crossed, met my grandfather, who was born, his family was from Michoacan in Mexico, and
Mm-hmm.
then was born in Texas, so was born an American citizen, but like moved with his family, which was really big, and just for opportunities. And my grandparents, they both ended up in like the San Pedro area, like Los Angeles, the
Mm-hmm.
Port of Los Angeles, in the canneries, and that's where they met. Where like canneries of tuna, I believe, where they were working, and then they started a family there. So whenever I would go to my grandparents' house, my grandma would like be very upset that I didn't know Spanish, and I would learn like different
Mm,
things like milk, like leche, and
sure.
and things like that, but couldn't really like carry on like a table conversation. So she would switch to English there. So yeah, and it wasn't. So I grew up in Los Angeles for a good chunk of my life, and then in middle school I ended up moving to Tucson. Los Angeles is very diverse
Yeah.
with like everybody. So it's
Mm-hmm.
not just two races. It's like we have every single race, like Asian and like everyone. When I went to Tucson, it was like you're white, there's some black folks, or you're Mexican. So it's
Yeah.
very like stark. So when I moved to Tucson, like a lot of my like Mexican friends were like first generation Mexican, and they would always like assume I knew Spanish. So that was always like a tough conversation. I
Mm-hmm.
would get called like coconut. I don't know if you ever heard that nickname
No.
before. It was like brown on the outside, white on the inside.
Okay.
And it was like by my own people. And I'm like,
Yeah.
what? So grew up very sensitive around like, and just like kind of wish like my parents spoke Spanish at home. And in college, I was just like, oh, I get to pick all my electives at the University of Arizona. So I will like learn about my heritage. And I
Mm-hmm.
took a lot of like Latin American studies and like learned about like the differences of like Hispanic and Latino before like there was like Latinx and things along those lines. So
Mm-hmm.
it was more of like the history, and it was helpful for me just to be connected with my community. And it always reminds me of, I was in, I want to say like Joshua Tree with my wife years later. And I was at a diner. I woke up like really early. So my wife was still at like our Airbnb. And it was my waiter was speaking to me in Spanish. And I was like, oh, lo siento, like mi español es muy malo, yeah, yeah, yeah. And then he was just like, can you try? And I was like, oh, yeah, I could try. And he's like, okay. So we were doing it, and then very nice guy. And I was like, where are you from? He was just like, oh, I'm from Guatemala. And I was like, oh my gosh, my wife, she's half Guatemalan, half Colombian, and first generation. She speaks Spanish, and always been gracious on like trying to teach me little words. And to
Mm-hmm.
your point around Spain Spanish, Mexican Spanish, like Colombian Spanish
Oh
is
yeah.
like
Oh
so
yeah.
fast. And then Guatemalan is Spanish is like very slow, but there's different like nuances there. But he like looked at me and he was just like, you should try, because
Mm.
it will open up a whole world of new people if you try to speak Spanish. And I think
Mm.
from that conversation, which was like the few positive conversations about like, it's not judgmental, not like how are you Latino and not speaking Spanish.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just like, you should try. And I think from then on, I'll try, and like I'm okay and I'm getting better. When we went to Barranquilla, Colombia, I think that was like my peak. We were there for like a week. But like when you're immersed in it, I'm definitely
100%.
so much better, but I default to what's comfortable for me. And yeah, so still to this day, not great at Spanish. However, my 3-year-old is learning. She's like so smart. She's catching up to me. So now I'm like, okay, I have someone to learn with. So I'm learning with my
Yeah.
girls,
Oh, I love
which is
that.
great. And it's such a beautiful thing. And sometimes I'll like say something and she'll look at me blank, and then I'll like, oh, she knows the Spanish word for that. So I'll have to like look at the Spanish word. So yeah, but it's definitely been a journey. And I think at least Mexicans, they are so ruthless. Like you're not Mexican
Oh
enough
my
to be
God.
Mexican, or you're not American enough to be American, like especially
Mm-hmm.
in today's climate. So it's just like you feel othered. And I think one of the artists that was like a mixed person was just like, you feel like you're not a part of anything then.
Yeah.
And I feel like more responsible to like I get it. Like Latinos love to joke and poke fun to the point where like you're almost gonna cry, and then you're
Yeah.
like, no, I'm gonna hold it. But yeah, I think it's just like why not be kind and just like, hey, do you know how to say this? Let me teach you.
Mm-hmm.
You know? So
Yeah, I mean, in that man who did that with you, making that kind invitation of like, just try. What a
yeah.
game changer versus it being like, what? You don't speak Spanish, but you're Latino. Like, how do you not speak Spanish? And like going to that immediate berating and judgment instead of like, oh, okay, well, let's just like try this and see what happens, and see if we can communicate. I think that is something definitely in Mexican American culture. Like people are very quick to be like, oh, they don't speak Spanish. They're not like Mexican, and it is the phrase in Spanish, is ni de aquí ni de allá,
Mhm.
like not from here and nor from there. And that feeling of like not fitting in or belonging in either space. And I've gone through that process too of like feeling like, am I kind of a fraud because I am embracing this culture that I didn't grow up speaking the language, that my upbringing was such a mix of, yes, this Mexican identity, but like a lot of US media and culture and music and all of that stuff all mixed in. And so sometimes I'm speaking to other Latinas who are just like, oh, you remember this show or that show or this show? I'm like, I don't know that. Like, I know a few of them because I remember my grandma watching some of these
Mhm.
shows, but like, I didn't sit down necessarily and watch them with her. Like, sometimes I did, but I didn't understand what was going on. I didn't speak the language. And so I didn't have as much interest in consuming those shows. And it's it is this like, how do I like manage this? And I think I've gotten to this place in my life where like, oh, there's nothing actually to manage. No matter what, there are pieces of me in all of these things, and all of these things make up who I am too. And it's okay that it's not strictly super Mexican culture or super Americanized culture, that it is this mix of all of these different things. Yeah, it's a really interesting that that space, I think, to occupy is really interesting. Again, like not being
Yeah.
first gen, being a little bit further removed, and the language piece. I feel that so much with like really people who come from immigrant families of all backgrounds. The language piece is such a big thing. Like if they don't know the language, it's like, oh, I've like lost this part
Yeah.
of my history, and I don't know. It's it's
Yeah.
a whole
Yeah,
thing.
there's so much there. I will say I had like a level setting conversation with my wife before we got married. She was like teasing me. That's just like not even like, I think people tease because they are like just so used to teasing of something that's unique. So I was just like, hey, I'm like really sensitive about like not speaking Spanish.
Yeah.
And I was like very like hypersensitive at that time. But I'm still trying and I'm like chipping away at it. And, she respected that and like would just be mindful about that conversation. But it came out of me what now I live by, which is like when someone's like teasing me and they're like, oh, you're like, I guess like there's other cultures oh, I'm going to take your like card away from you and you're
Yeah.
not like that heritage
Mm-hmm.
or whatever. But I'm like, look, like I grew up with like chorizo con huevos. I grew up with menudo.
Yeah.
Like I like
Yeah.
heritage is like in you, and
Yeah.
it's the traditions that your family passes down to you, because it might not look like a telenovela or
Yeah.
something that's like one upping everyone. It's just not worth it. And then to add on to that, like my friends that are first generation, they always complain to me that like they'll go to Mexico and their cousins there are just like, you're white, like you're
Yeah.
American, like
Oh yeah.
you can speak Spanish, but like you're not like Mexican.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
do you walk on the streets like in TJ or Ensenada or like Chihuahua? And then you're just like, okay, like we're all getting it, and like,
Uh-huh.
but you
Uh-huh.
can choose to be kind through that. And I get the joking part, but yeah. So I think like for me, it's always just like, yeah, I know. Um, one of the things that you mentioned in a previous podcast was I think it was a Gomal, like you didn't know the name of.
Comal. Yeah.
Yeah. And then I'm like, oh shoot, that's a cast iron. And then you were talking about like somebody like cooking eggs on it or something, and like and like a cast
Soaking it
iron.
in water, leaving it
Yeah,
in the
it.
sink.
Oh
So
my gosh, yeah. I get it, and but for me, like that's like heritage is something that's in you, and it's
yeah.
passed down from your family or your friends, and you choose to be part of it. And I think for better or worse, a lot of a good portion of Latinos in this country that choose not to engage with their heritage and
Mm-hmm.
forget about it, which is super sad from my perspective.
Yeah.
That I just hope they realize that we all have our heritage, but we all can like be a good neighbor too. So yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I see that. I see that even in my own family, cousins who don't engage with these pieces of who we are. And that's their decision and their choice. And at the end of the day, I do feel like, it is kind of sad. I'm like, man, you're not engaging with this piece of you. And like you said, heritage it's who we are. It can mean so many different things. And this season is coming out during Latina Heritage Month. And I say Latina with an E because I have certain feelings about the word Hispanic. And this is going to be coming up in several of the episodes. And I have this conversation with some of the guests too. And it's not necessarily to be this like tokenized month, but I want us to be out there still and talking about things and embracing our cultures and the diversity amongst our cultures. Cause this is, again, getting to your point of like heritage is whatever you grew up in, whatever you make it to be. And we have so much diversity under this title of Latino or Latina or whatever. And then when you look even a layer deeper, it's not just Mexican American, but it's also, oh, well, I grew up Mexican American in Los Angeles or Tucson or the Bay Area or Chicago, and how all of those other pieces impact your cultural upbringing. And something that I think I mentioned this with a different guest this season, but I also am just like taking this time. I want us all to be taking this time to continue taking up space physically on podcasts, in social media, in writing, whatever, because there is such a huge concerted effort coming from a large portion of this nation to invoke fear, which then is leading to silencing us, to make people not want to talk about these things. Like quite literally, the Supreme fucking Court just did this, and it is to stir up fear. And I don't want that to be dictating how I operate in this country. I don't want to not dress a certain way because of that. And also paired with that, recognizing I have the privilege to make that decision to speak out. And a lot of people in my circles have the privilege to make that decision. And there are people who do not because they don't have any layer of protection for them. And it's this whole concept of like, show up for the people who can't,
Mhm.
speak up for the people who can't. And that's primarily like my focus and my goal with highlighting these folks in my life during this month providing this space to have these conversations is like, we're not going to be quiet. We're not going to go away. We're not going to shy away anymore. Like, we're still here, and we're still going to be talking about things, and we're going to be speaking out and doing the thing. And it's just, yeah, that's just what my hope is with this specific season and throughout the rest of the life of this podcast. Like, there are always going to be people from all types of backgrounds coming through, because these are the people who have come in and out of my life, you know?
Yeah, your point about like I think words are powerful. Hispanic versus Latina.
Mm-hmm.
I finished a book called Defactors. I don't know if you've heard
Mm.
about
Mm-mm.
by Paola Ramos.
Okay.
And I never would
Oh,
have read.
she's cool.
Yeah, yeah. I never would have honestly found this book unless like a buddy who recommended it to me. So I was reading it, and it's essentially about Latinos in the U.S. that turned to white supremacy,
Mm.
which I was always confused about.
Yeah.
I just didn't know how they, I guess, like would get like radicalized. But she has a whole chapter on, the connection to Spain. And there is like an interview she did in, I want to say, New Mexico. And like the guy won't call himself Mexican. He'll call himself Spanish, and he'll
Mm.
use Hispanic. And I think it's interesting. And like for me, it's not usually the genre I read or any of that. And I think as I'm aging and reading more, realize that like I need to read things that like I don't 100% agree with. Like Paula, she's very smart, and she had like, I would say like the majority of the book is amazing. There was like a
Mm-hmm.
few things that like I hard disagree with, but I think that's good. And I think like
Mm-hmm.
it's good to like not be in an echo chamber
Mm-hmm.
and only consume what your ideals are.
Yeah.
But still know like you have values, and be fine with like disagreeing. And I think that's where I hope we go as a country, because I think we're getting more divided, and
Mm-hmm.
it's so fractured with Stephen Colbert and now Jimmy Kimmel and all of these like late night people getting
I know.
axed. And I think it always has to do with money. There was like, again, New York Times posted like a deal that like these affiliates are doing, and like they want to
Mm-hmm.
make just like do what they do. And I think
Yeah.
like even with like the acquisition of Paramount Plus, and when that was going
Mm-hmm.
through, they had to kind of change things around with Stephen Colbert. But yeah, I think like the country is built on freedom of speech, and you would think that from the other side, that's one of their values, but
Yeah.
now it's very much being silenced to only one side. And I think
Exactly.
that's where we just can improve. So yeah, I think I'm getting more into just like history of like politics and things like that as I age, just because of like the ways things are shaping. Yeah, I think like I was never a big reader in high school or even college. I was a business communications major, so I didn't really have to read too much. But in my late 20s, I really got into reading, and I just read things that like I really enjoyed at the time. And now I would call myself a reader. I think it's like basic things, right? Like walking's
Yeah.
really important, and reading's really important as like
Yeah.
you learn wisdom over your years.
Yeah, and I think that's also an interesting thought here when you were talking about like reading in school. In high school, you have like your English lit class and you have to do all of this assigned reading and stuff. But something that and I haven't really explored this deeply at all, but it was a thought that came up recently that I was like, why is the reading curricula so European in high school? Because I remember, or very white American. I don't remember reading from many diverse authors in high school. It's all considered quote unquote like classic American literature. But what about all of the other authors and perspectives? And so I feel like through that, we're getting a very specific window and lens in which we see US literature too. And then when I went to college, I went to a liberal arts university and was also a business major. I was business and leadership, but I happened to have two minors, which was just me being an overachiever and all of those things that we've like touched on a little bit earlier. But one of mine was Latin American studies. And it was one of the first times that I was reading books written by Latino authors, and then also reading books about so many different nations in Latin America and cultures and different identity, like microcosms too in these different nations. And some of those weren't written by Latinos. A lot of them were also written by like white dudes, but it was the first time kind of really intentionally being exposed to that information or like realm of thinking. And this is where I first started dissecting the different terms of like Hispanic, Latino, Chicano. And this is where I was like, whoa, this is the first time this is actually being presented to me as something to think about and evaluate and try to understand and pull apart and play with in a way, and realizing like, okay, I do on a technical level identify with all of those words, but me personally, I don't like identifying with Hispanic. Like that's not how I identify. I identify more Latina and Chicana, you know, and that's because growing up in Southern California, the Chicana part specifically was being exposed to very Chicano focused events and spaces. And it was just like part of the language and the nomenclature that I grew up in. So it's interesting. And as an adult, I've gone through like phases of reading more and less and all of that stuff. And more recently, looking at and feeling like there is such importance to understanding that history, the like politics history, but also just like the identity politics history and the cultural history and significance of everything. There is in the first season, the last guest on the episode, Joan, she is so well read. And like she was a journalist. So it's how she was like trained to do this stuff, and she's so well read, and she just knows all these facts and dates, and this act happened and that act happened, and then this was passed and this regulation was changed, and this is how it impacts migration today. And I'm just like, damn, I need to learn that, you know. And I need to be like, I want to be more informed. I don't know if I'll ever get to the level that she's at, because like, yeah, she's very well read, very, very, just, yeah, an amazing human being. And that is something though, I'm like, okay, it is also important to know these things in the context of how everything has evolved and changed over the years, because having that information and education just gives you better perspective. And I think when we are in these spaces, when you realize that the rhetoric that people are using is actually very poorly informed, you can also, from a factual place versus an emotional place, be like, actually, this is what happened, and this is how this changed. And that's why it is the way that it is, because a lot of the extreme language that's used is not rooted or founded in any real facts or events. Yeah. Anyway, just to say,
there's so
like,
much
yeah,
there.
yeah,
Well,
so
so
much there.
it's crazy because like you brought up Chicanos and like how I describe my mom. My mom is like the Chicano side, and then my dad was like more. He was first generation, and on his side, it was more like assimilation, and grew up with like the Doors and like AC/DC and like classic rock, really loved blues. My mom, all the music choices were very American focused. My mom liked
Mm-hmm.
Motown and like 80s rock and things like that. So like I never grew up with like real like Mexican music. And I think that is such a big piece of like culture
Mm-hmm.
that I'm discovering, years later as I'm becoming an adult, because like my wife on the Colombian side like loves like Carlos Vivas, and now like I learned to appreciate Carlos Vivas because like I
Mm-hmm.
never knew Colombian music. Like I
Yeah.
barely scratched the surface with like Mexican cumbias and Mexican
Yeah.
music, and like all the time. Like you said it earlier, like when somebody that's like Mexican will be like, "Hey, like you got to know this song. This song is at like every Thea's funeral." I'm like, "Nope." And we were in Guatemala one night and driving, and I was like, I always like curious on songs that make you into a certain mood. I was just like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, like I don't know anything about Guatemalan music. We've been playing cumbias, like I'm loving cumbias now because for me, if I play a song enough, it will remind me of that trip. And I love like playing a song over and over again. So when I hear that song, I think I'm in Antigua or wherever. So I asked like the car at the time, I was just like, hey, can you everyone go around and play the saddest song? And literally people were crying in the car,
Oh
playing
my
like this is
God.
like a funeral song and all of these things. But for me, it was like helpful. Like I like Shazammed all of them and like saved them on my phone. But because I did those are sad to me, A, because I don't speak the language. And then
Sure.
B, I don't have any of the references to like the funerals and
Yeah.
like that. Yeah, that's like a whole other thing in like Latin America where like they bury someone the next day, and
Mm.
like because there's not like a preservation. I remember like driving to Ensenada like the night of when a family member passed, and you like stay with the body all night, and
Yeah.
those are like that's heritage, that's like culture,
Yeah.
like we don't do that here because
Mm-mm.
we can preserve a body in America for X
Mm-hmm.
amount of days or weeks. And yeah, there's so much and it's
Yeah.
beautiful. And I think it's
Yeah.
like the conversations like you get there, and uh I think that's the power of like these long form conversations and hearing someone speak and actually listening to them, not like
Mm-hmm.
multitasking, not doing other things, like really sitting down and like having a conversation is so important.
Yeah. And I feel like we don't give ourselves the opportunities that often anymore to do that, to sit down and actually have a conversation and explore different topics that just like come up on their own and go
Mhm.
with that whole just whatever, wherever it goes, that's where it goes. And that's where we explore. And I, again, that's like another part of this podcast of like, I want to invite people to try to make the space and time for those moments and those conversations, because I think that it helps us not just to connect with the person in front of us, but to reconnect with ourselves and other people around us, because you have this understanding then, or maybe it opens the door of like, oh, I just learned so much more about this one person, and have a better understanding of their multifacetedness. And what if I take that perspective with everybody else who I interact with just today or every day? And maybe have this understanding of like, I can actually relate to a lot more people in a lot more ways than I assumed I did or I could. And even, I mean, this music piece, right? Like my parents did not teach me Spanish. The music they listened to was very diverse though. Like my dad was a huge Beatles fan. Like he was
Mhm.
always playing the Beatles. And my parents, neither of them really like ranchero music or anything like that. But my mom always listened to like Spanish language music. Like that was the radio station. It was 107.1, 107.1 in in Los Angeles, and it was all like Spanish rock, Spanish pop. And so I grew up listening to a lot of different Spanish language music, but it's very specific to like the 90s and early aughts. Like that's the, that's what I know. And then like Selena, who was just like very ever present also, I think in all sorts of Mexican communities. And there are some songs that I know and I'm like, how do you not, my friends who are not Latino at all. But I'm like, yeah, don't you know this person? And they're just like, I don't know who you're talking about. And I think, like, for me, that one song of like, this is played not at every funeral, but every birthday, every wedding, every quinceañera is Suavemente.
Oh yeah.
Do you know? Okay, yeah. And
Yeah, yeah.
that's like, it comes on and you're just like, everybody is going to go dance and have fun. And that's the song. And that came on when I was in a bar in Los Angeles with my husband, who is not Latino. And there was like a little section of the bar, very, very like Latino bar. I did not realize like this super Latino bar, but like young people, millennials,
Yeah, yeah.
and they start playing Suavemente and there's a little dance floor area. And I'm like, oh my God, I love it. And everybody from the whole fucking bar just like goes to the dance floor. And my husband is like, what is this? I'm like,
Yeah.
how do you not know this?
Yeah.
And it's funny because he's lived in Guatemala and in Nicaragua, but like, different cultures. It's not like Latino American culture at all, but it was just
He's a
like,
down ass fool. So
yeah,
yeah. I got to meet him when I was in Hawaii. He was super kind, and
yeah,
then I
yeah,
dragged him to coffee with us. I was like,
yes,
"You gotta have
yes,
coffee with us," and it was such a pleasure. The one and like I love putting myself on blast because like I know I'll get like crap for this, but like Vicente Hernandez,
okay, yeah,
like no idea. Yeah, and I would say his
I
name wrong. Fernandez, not Hernandez.
Fernandez, okay,
Fernandez. But all his music, and now I know it. But like at the
sure,
time, I didn't grow up with it. So
yeah,
like they're like,
yeah,
oh, do you know this? That's a classic. And then
yeah,
I would see him, like on the TV and everything. And then I realized he's like the Mexican Elvis, or like just like
yeah,
legendary, and like you gotta know Vicente. And yeah, but it's those aspects of like if someone didn't grow up in America and you're just like, you don't know Paul McCartney, or I
yeah,
mean, or like Journey, or
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Jim Morrison, or
yeah.
somebody that's
Well,
like
I'm that
Bruce
way with like
Springsteen. Yeah.
country music, right? And that's
Hmm.
something that I've had people be like, you don't know this. I'm like, I did not grow up listening to fucking
Yeah,
country
yeah,
music. Like,
yeah,
no, I don't know. They're like, but they're legendary. And I'm like, cool. Do you know this person? No? Okay, great.
yeah.
Let's,
It's the same thing.
yeah. Mm-hmm.
The weird thing, never liked country. I knew like two country songs. As I'm older, like it's only certain country songs, but I think they're great storytellers. I'll give them that. But like, there's something about like them talking. It's not like the tractor stuff. Like, I don't
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
resonate, but like
Yeah.
them talking about like the cheap seats at a baseball game,
Mm,
like, or just grabbing like a folding chair and sitting by a river. As I'm getting older, I'm like, oh my gosh, that sounds so peaceful. I
yeah.
get it.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, but that's the power of music and like good storytelling. Musically, not my cup of tea. I'm like funk and soul and, blues and hip hop.
Nice.
But
Yeah.
yeah, it's interesting. It's like, I feel like it's creeping on me as I'm like getting older, as like country music. I'm like, I don't like this, but yeah, all right.
Yeah. I have learned in adulthood, there is a range, right? I definitely, as a kid, had a very specific understanding and idea of what country music is. I understand there's a range. Still not going to be what I like choose to put on and listen to while I'm driving around or listening to music, but like, yeah, okay, I can at least understand the place and the setting and the appreciation for it.
Yeah, for sure.
Um, so I wanted to say that you said in that in the form that I asked you to fill out, you said this very short sentence that was like, I don't know a lot. And I want to say nobody knows a lot,
Mm.
you know? And find that I shy away from people who are self-identified experts,
Mm.
or yeah, because I don't think those who are experts, quote unquote, actually understand a ton. I mean, unless it's a very, I don't know, like very scientific field, like you need to have all of that training and stuff. It's like, even when I know and understand so much about a very specific thing, the more you learn, the more you realize you have so much more to learn. And so I don't know. I just like invite you to, I don't think anybody knows a lot. I think we're all figuring it out. And I think you do also know a lot about a lot of different things. And I think that shows up in the way that you created community, that you learned how to connect with people, and you have connected with people, and you've brought people together. And I would assume it shows up just in the way that you interact with your family too, and your kids, and touching on all of the different things that we've explored in this conversation of like even understanding, it's always a building block from one generation to the next. There are things that you can recognize in your upbringing that you want to shift and do differently, and having that intentional thought process of like learning that you want to do things differently and how to do that. So I just wanted to say that I read that and I was like, man, no, he knows, things, a lot. And at the same time, like, I think that we all are still, we should always all be on this continuous journey of learning more, because if we're not, like, what the hell are we doing? Right?
Yeah. I don't remember putting that, but it's definitely me because obviously I put
Yeah.
it in that form. But I think at the root of it, and thank you for
Yeah.
saying that. I think like it's well received in my heart, and I think it's a good reminder, and that's part of community. It's to be lifted up by your community as well, because I don't think see, like our superpowers
Mm-hmm.
as like our friends and community around us do. So that's even more important, to not be isolated and
Yeah.
all of that. I think that phrase like makes sure that I stay with a lens of humility.
Mm.
And to your point, I think like the more I know, the more I don't know. And the
Mm-hmm.
more I learn, it's like, wow, like, I don't know a lot. But I will say the other, I think, root of where that comes from is just marketing, because marketing is all
Mm-hmm.
about you're an expert, you leverage
Mm-hmm.
your expertise, and then you're
Mm-hmm.
authentic. And
Mm-hmm.
this is all of the things you do to then get someone to consume or purchase
Mm-hmm.
and all of that. And
Mm-hmm.
working for like a big streaming company and trying to like do what I do, that's the world I live in. And I think like for me, I'm like, there's just so much like nuances to humanity.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I think those are like the two things that come up with like that sentence of like, I don't know a lot. And it's more of like othering myself from the industry I swim in, and then also
Mm-hmm.
reminding myself to continue to grow. And I think that's where like personal development and growing as
100%.
a person and being able to admit like, hey, I was wrong, and then let me do some research.
Yeah.
Where I think we're very, or at least me, at times where like I'm set in a way, and then if someone teaches me something, I'm okay with like, okay, let me take that back and see the validity of it, and then we'll
Mm-hmm.
carry on a conversation. So I think public discourse is very low, especially from opposing views, and
Yeah.
it's not always, I don't know, I always get served these like long form like debate videos of like this liberal person sitting with like this
Yeah.
mega thing, and
Yeah.
like I get it, and it's like probably going to get a lot of views, but like just have a conversation. I think
Mm-hmm.
I just got served one video of like Bernie Sanders going to West Virginia and talking to a bag of people, but like just having a meal. And I think that's like more of a productive conversation than like he's not down there going like, you got to change your ways. Like you voted for this. And now like, do you see the money coming in? Like, and are
Yeah.
you any better? Is like giving tax cuts to millionaires and billionaires like the right thing to do, you know?
Yeah.
So yeah, there's ways around like just building and having like good conversations, I think. Yeah, that I hope that like things like this of like you can not agree with everything I said, but you know, there might be some things that make you consider differently if we have
Hmm.
opposing views. And I think that's so important. And I hope and pray that that's like the future for this country, because I think that's the only way forward. Because if it's
100%.
silos and echo chambers and these algorithms are only getting better,
Oh,
and
yeah.
now, you know, Ray-Ban and Meta have glasses that have a screen, like now we don't have to look at our phones, we can
Yeah.
just consume all day.
Yeah.
Like how scary is that? So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. It's wild to think about those things too. And I mean, the algorithm thing is so real. And I very intentionally keep certain people in my social media world because it's like I want to know what you're seeing too. I want to have a small window into that. Yeah, and it's just like I wish that I don't know, I wish that like more people would be a little bit hmm not so hard, I guess, in and hard set in their thinking and ways. And
Mhm.
we could have a whole other freaking hour-long conversation
Yeah,
about
yeah.
this, and I'm not gonna go down that rabbit hole. But like,
As David said last time, he goes, I'm going to be on multiple times.
yeah,
I
yeah.
think the thing I took from that conversation, which you can probably put it in the like the footnotes of that conversation, which I really enjoyed. I was like walking on the beach path in Long Beach, listening to you guys, was I got to see this meme like dump
Yeah.
that he does. Like I'm like I was stoked, you know, like
Yeah.
it's like this. If we I don't know about you, but like I cry to music sometimes, like really
Oh,
deep music,
yeah.
and I like shared that with somebody, and they were like, "Oh, Einstein cried with music," so I was like, "Oh, maybe like I'm
I'm like
intelligent in
Einstein.
a weird way." Yeah, I'm intelligent like that. But the meme thing reminded me of like, oh, this is the last song I cried to. I'm gonna send it to you after this podcast.
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
then I want to know like what that song was, you know?
Yeah.
And there was a good song. I worked on some of the advertising for the F1 movie with
Mm,
Brad Pitt,
mhm.
and the soundtrack is amazing. Like usually I don't really like big like
Yeah.
Top Gun Maverick kind
Yeah,
of
yeah, yeah.
movies and soundtracks, but there was a song that I really enjoyed, and I did like a radio on Spotify, and then all of these amazing songs came up, and that
Awesome.
one song I cried to, I was just like, oh my
No.
gosh. Like she said that you realize as you age, your parents are just broken kids. They have like a
Mm,
broken kid in them. And the first
mm,
time you like your heart breaks is like when you drop off your kid from school,
mm,
and you, as a kid, you realize that you can't go home with your parents. And like,
mm.
it's going to make me cry now. Like,
Yeah.
I am just like, oh, so deep. But like for me, music and lyrics, like,
100%.
oh my goodness, like how
Yeah.
powerful. And I think
Yeah.
for good, and like you, a good cry is always good. From
100%.
what's that movie, Garden State, which is like
Uh-huh.
one of my favorite like top 5 movies. It's just like a
I
good
haven't seen
cry.
that in such a long time.
Oh, it's
But
so,
yeah,
and
no,
yeah,
I literally have a playlist called Llorando, just crying. It's my
yeah,
crying
yeah,
playlist, you know, and they are these songs that like have evoked that emotion in me, whether it's a happy or a sad cry, right? And
yeah,
but they are, yeah. And you're reminding me, I've actually been thinking about adding something to that form of like share a song with me.
yeah.
And I think I want to start doing that and integrating some music stuff into this podcast
Can
too,
I
because
can I start about, since I shared the story in Guatemala,
yeah.
like can I share the crying song with you?
Yes. Oh my god,
Okay,
yeah,
I'll
please
share it
do.
after this. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And then because yeah, I'm just interested because like there are like good cries, happy cries, and like sad cries. I think,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, the last time I had like a sad cry, like it was uncontrollable. And
Mm,
it was with like a guy that was an acquaintance that we got to like kick it a couple times. And then like I found out he passed and he was young. He was like a chef
mm,
DJ for like propaganda. And like I met him at like a coffee shop and then we kicked it and then we went to like uh Chewy's no longer here, which is gonna make me
mm.
cry. But like we went to Primera Taza and then like to his spot and then we were driving home and then like shortly after we kicked it for the first time, they were like, oh, he passed. And I was just like, what?
Yeah.
Like when young people pass, like, and it's
Yeah.
unexpected. And I'll pass
Yeah.
by his like his house in West Long Beach. He's a Filipino guy. And I'm just like, man, yeah. So yeah, that could be a whole other podcast is
Oh, yeah.
like happy cries. And I think this song is for more like a happy cry of like Matthew, be present, be mindful. Like you have
Mm,
these young kids for like a snap of the finger, be
mm-hmm.
mindful, get off your phone,
Mm-hmm.
don't just turn on She Loves like Super Mario, that movie now. Like it's so much easier. Like we're trying not to
100%.
do iPads or like
Yeah.
videos and so yeah, just trying to be present and like a decent parent and like yeah, but we're struggling because like we'll be at like at CPK or California Pizza Kitchen and we don't do iPads or phones. We're
Oh, and they're
like
just
just
like all over
struggling.
the
We're like,
place.
we
Yeah.
got crayons, are we coloring? What are we
Yeah.
doing?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So but
Oh,
yeah, to each their own.
yeah. I mean, I remember that as a kid. That was the entertainment at a restaurant, the crayons,
Yeah.
and that was it, crayons on the paper placemat or
Yeah. Yeah.
the paper quote unquote tablecloth. I thank you for sharing that. And yes, please do send me that song. And
Will do.
again, this is reminding me. I think I need to add that to our little intake form there because yeah, there's something about music, right? So thank you.
Yeah.
And I just want to say again, like, thank you for coming on and thank you for being here and being open to having this conversation. We've like kind of been on the sidelines of each other's lives for a few years and we've met in person, I think, gosh, maybe once or twice.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I can, the way that I see how you show up in social media spaces and that's how I see you more regularly. I don't know. I was like, I want to have a bigger conversation with you and get to know each other a bit more and yeah, just have you here. So thank you for being open to the conversation and participating.
Yeah. No, thank you so much. I was like how we're recording this, you get to peek at like the time that has passed. And
Yeah.
I know it's a wonderful conversations because they're like 20-minute chunks. And I'm
Mhm.
like, this time is flying. And that's when you like get lost in like conversations and you're really, really like present.
Yeah.
And I appreciate this. I think like, yeah, my soul has probably wanted like a good conversation like this.
Yeah.
And I appreciate you creating the space for it. So yeah, next time we're in LA, let's grab a cafecito.
100%. Yes.
And yeah, there's a ton of new places opening and it's great because it's like
Yeah.
the intersection of culture and coffee in LA is blowing up. If it's like
Yeah.
Korean culture or if it's like Mexican culture or Salvadorian or, you know, whatever culture,
Yeah.
it's such a like a brilliant time. And I think, you know, a coffee shop is like the conduit of the neighborhood and you really get the vibe. And I think, you know, the more I talk about it out loud, I'm like, okay, I gotta get out of my pour over station here, which I love making coffee at home, but I just got to go like connect because it's such a magical place. And I think that's one of the many things of coffee shops that are beautiful. So, but yeah, again, thank you for having me.
Thank you so much. And thank you all for listening. My name is Madeline Longoria Garcia, and these are our other stories. You can stream this podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, AntennaPod, YouTube, and anywhere else you do your podcast listening. Please do subscribe, comment, reach out via social media, reach out to Matthew if you want to chat with him more. I will be tagging him on all the social posts for this. So yes, thank you for being here and have a great day.